My name is Sammy Ijaz, and I am the host of House of Politics. House of Politics is a talk show that brings on existing government officials from MPs, MPPs, councillors, mayors, and interviews them on their life prior to politics, how they got into politics, their greatest achievements, and what they've learned so far in politics. Today, joining me is Colin Best, who is the regional councillor of Ward 1 in Milton. Colin, how are you?
Well, thank you, Sammy. I think it's good to be on.
Good to have you. Colin, let me take you right back to where you were born. Where'd you grow up? And, prior to politics, what were you doing?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Milton, and the town was only 4,000 people when I was born here.
Wow.
So I saw a lot of changes. I basically grew up like most Emerald families. I went to university. I got involved in the community, and I saw a need when I first ran for local council. And also I've been involved, my background is property appraisals. I've been doing that for 30 years, mostly for banks and mortgage companies, and also very involved in the community.
Right, and you said you went to university. What university did you go to? What was the program
well,
that you...
I did Western Business Administration as well as McMaster in Urban Geography.
So now, how does one go from that and 30 years ago, that when you made the decision to get into politics in 1980, how do you get into politics? Where does that mindset come from? Is it? I know your father was into politics, so share a little bit more about that. Then your grandfather was also into politics. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting. It's almost like farming or flying or firefighters. Basically, it was in my blood because I've been involved, since I was 7. Actually, my kids have been doing it since they were 2. Right. And basically, you're involved. I was out at public meetings when my father was mayor, so I learned about it. And actually, it was quite coincidence. My first term was my grandfather's last term, so we had a lot of interesting, comparisons and stuff. And actually, if you ever get the mayor on, you see when his wife's kept a scrapbook since he was elected in 1965. A lot of the issues they were talking about in 1965, we're still talking about.
Right now. What's your favorite thing about Milton? I mean, Milton has grown massively, but if you were to tell me that one thing that you absolutely love about Milton, what would that be?
It's even though it's growing, it's still a small town. You can still walk down the street. Any community event, you meet families, you see people involved in the community, and also it's a mix of urban and rural. Right. You've got the escarpment, which is probably in the GTA the most noticeable attraction that we have. Right. And it's in my ward, by the way. And also,
got to add that in there somewhere.
Of course, that's when every time some other community said, "Oh, hey, look, we got Kelson Rouse." Like, yeah, that's in Milton, not Burlington. Right. But the big thing is we have something that's unique in the whole GTA, and we want to preserve it.
Right. And I know Ward 1 is the biggest ward in Milton. And how do you feel about that? Being a regional councillor of the largest ward in Milton, you can fit as you said, you can fit those 3 wards into that Ward 1. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I grew up in the country. My family bought a farm up Nappy Line. We grew up on the escarpment, so I'm very familiar with the areas, and I know the needs. And I live in the rural area. Or, people call it semi-rural now because around the Tremaine Road area, we've seen tremendous change on one side of the road, but the other side of the road is preserved because the NEC protected area. Right. So it's one thing that I've grew my whole life there, from basically a small town to the rural area to basically a mixed community, which I've been very familiar with because I have the Scott neighborhood, which is basically built in the last 10 years between Derry and Main Street,
which is fairly new. Yeah. And then you've got the rural areas that are completely 70 years old. 80 years old.
Or more. Well, actually, the joke in that way, you're still a newcomer until you have 3 generations buried in the cemetery. But each area has its unique features, and that's one thing I'm used to it because I know I'm on the Downtown Business Improvement Area Board, and that's one of the things we found at the workshop we had last week with Charles Montgomery, is a lot of people like Milton because we still have that quaint downtown that we want to preserve and make sure that it's still a viable place. Right.
Now, the Colin Best 30 years ago in 1980 versus today, that's a large time frame that I'm giving you, but I want you to go back to that 30-year gap and tell me 1 or 2 of your biggest accomplishments that you feel that, this is something that I've done and I've given back to the community in this way, and 1 or 2 things that you've learned in these 30 years.
Well, a lot of it is just being involved in the community, making sure we have a balanced community. That's my stress. Is that we can't be everybody's favorite community. We're trying to make it, as I tell new residents, it's my hometown. I want to make it your hometown. Right. Making sure, and that's why I work very closely with our school board trustees. And I was quite pleased to be at the groundbreaking for the new high school on Brawny Street. Right. And making sure we have the facilities. And my biggest challenge right now is getting the education village going. Right. That's what I hope to be my biggest accomplishment. as well as having the facilities and employment in town. So we have that balanced community.
Right.
So you can live, work, shop, and retire in the community. That's one of our biggest challenges for our seniors.
Right.
Is having a place they can retire to, because a lot of them can't manage in their home. I just had an email this morning from a resident saying, okay, how do I get a transit pass for my husband who can't drive anymore?
Right.
And that's the challenges of serving people. And that's what I enjoy. And so my wife always jokes, you're married to the town. Says, yeah, in a way I am.
Right. Now, you talked about transit, and I just want to touch a bit about transit. When I was campaigning door-to-door last year, I met a few seniors, and the seniors said that they had I think once every month or something like that, they get transit for free or at a discounted cost. But in Mississauga, that's done much more often than it is in Milton. So if I was to ask you that these seniors did have that complaint that, you know what, we want this type of transit more frequently, so we can actually hang out with our old buddies and actually go one place to another, but at a very low cost or a free cost. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, very supportive actually. So the town, as that part of their 2020 budget, is looking at getting more accessible transit buses that can get into neighborhoods and actually pick people up from the door, as well as Councillor De Lorenzo and I have got a motion coming to council to having more free programs for our seniors, because most of them are later in the morning and afternoon when there's not too many people on the buses, as opposed to when commuters are going at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning or in the evening. So we're trying to make it so that people can retire, because we have a very small seniors population right now in comparison to other communities. But it's growing, and we have to make sure we have them, because we want people to stay in the community. We don't want them to have to move out.
Right. Now, is there any transit plan where you will be able to link Milton to Burlington, Milton to Oakville, Milton to, Mississauga? Is there anything in play, or should there be anything in play?
There is actually, from our transit master plan. One of the ideas was to connect it with the outlet center on Trafalgar Road in Hornby, and then also with the Liscar GO station. But that's something we're also looking for partners, because we have a unique system. It's the town runs it, but it's contracted out to a private Pacific Western. So we're looking at, how can we do this on maybe a charter basis or something doing. And we have like 5 major priorities that the transit operations manager, came to council and said, yeah, okay, we'll try and fund this, but again, we have some budget challenges this year.
Absolutely. Colin, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll talk about the Milton Education Village. We'll talk about the taxes, the infrastructure, and the new official plan for 2020 and how Milton is going to move forward. Can we take a quick break?
Sure.
We'll take a quick break. Keep watching House of Politics. We'll be right back after this break. Thank you very much. Welcome back to House of Politics. I'm your host, Sammy Ijaz, and joining me today is Colin Best from Milton, who's the regional councillor for Ward 1. Councillor, I want to talk to you about the Reed Side Road issue. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, this is an application by James Dick Company. They're a known aggregate company that basically quarries, gravel, sand, and other materials. They have big operations in Calgary. They're applying for 2 quarries in this area. One is called the Hidden Quarry on Highway 7, just north of Milton, which affects us in terms of water table and trucking, various things. And another one on the end of Reed Side Road, just to the west of Campbellville, but basically leads right into the urban area of Campbellville, which is a concern because 3 things. One is the trucking going through there. They're looking at almost 1,000 trucks a day, both back and forth through residential areas that weren't there. This is a previously quarry that was closed down in the early 2000s. Secondly, they want to blast underwater, under the water table, which is very concerning because this is right at the edge of the source water protection area, which feeds not only Campbellville but also the urban area of Milton, which is fed by the wells at Kelso. So we've got those 2 main issues, and the third is what's the long-term effect of having something this where it could be contaminating the water in this area. And also they also want to do some asphalt recycling and bringing in material where you don't know where it comes from. And that's a big issue in the rural area of trucks just coming in and dumping stuff, and you don't know where it came from.
Milton transformation has been massive. You were born and there was only 4,000 people, and then it went to 10, then it went to 20, 40, 80, 90, and today we're pushing about 130.
Yeah.
Would you say about 130-ish?
Yeah, it's about 125,000 probably this morning, 125 whatever afterwards.
Right.
About average about 4 to 5 families a day.
Right. So let's say 125,000. Talk to me about this transformation. The pros, the cons, and looking at Milton now moving forward, what are the changes that we need to make to accommodate this type of transformation?
Well, that's one of the things we're addressing in our budget's forecast, which we're dealing with next Monday night, and just highlighting, okay, here's where we are now, here's where we're going to be in 2041.
Right.
And what the province has told us in their policy statement is right now, Halton region, which is all Oakville, Burlington, Milton, Halton Hills,
right.
is about 580,000. They're saying by 2041 we should go to 1 million, which would make Milton the largest municipality of Halton.
Right.
Basically somewhere in the 350 to 400,000 range.
Right. Considering the amount of land we have and the amount of homes that we're putting up.
Yeah. It'd be about equivalent to either London, Ontario, or Markham. And what we're saying is, like, basically we have the regional official plan that's being done over the next 2 years, as well as the town. We're basically making some votes in 2020 and saying, okay, what do we want? Where do we want it? In what terms of it? Does it all go to Milton? Does some of it go to Halton Hills? How does the employment area? Because the biggest problem we have right now is people living in town working somewhere else. Not only here, but also the region has been average about 63%.
Right.
What we want to try and do is get it to 50%. So people actually live and work in the community, so they can actually shop here and basically have a life.
Right.
Because I know people that spend 2 or 3 hours a day just commuting.
And you talked a little bit about shopping, and we'll touch a little bit briefly on that. Can we get a better Milton Mall, possibly?
Yeah,
because a lot of people do talk about this, right? A Milton Mall looks like a variety store. So can we get a Milton Mall that actually looks like a mall that has Sephora and that has Aldo, that has the basic needs that most Miltonians need?
Yeah, actually, I talked to the new owners of Paradise Developments that took over the mall, and they're looking at actually doing right now the renovations for a daycare center and making it more of a family-friendly place to start with. They also own some additional properties that they're looking at transforming the mall over time. They haven't come up with the plans yet. It's going to be something that's going to maybe take 4 or 5 years to do, but it's right in the center of our central business district and also the provincial growth center. So we're looking at probably having another 5,000 to 10,000 people in that immediate area. You can see some of the buildings under construction right now by the GO station. We're going to have a lot more. We've got applications that we're probably going to see next year for the former Rona building where the Restore store is, and also around the GO station. We're hoping that Metrolinx has actually come back with their plan. We have not seen the final plan for the expansion. Once that happens, we also have developments like Fernbrook Homes or the old Works Yard on Nipissing Road for over 680 apartments.
Wow.
That is just going to be kicking off a lot of areas where people can actually live in that whole area and not have a car. They can use the GO Transit, they can use Milton Transit, they can shop, they can have their family there, because Milton is a very young community. We're at the youngest in GTA.
What is the average age is what, 33 years old?
34, yeah.
33,
you're
34.
Right in the range there,
So my take is that, see, me being a young individual, I mean, I'm 26, and there's a lot of young individuals that are growing up. I mean, I've had the pleasure of meeting these teens and these young 20s personally that go to school. And then there's this massive batch that's coming up that is in that early teens in high school or middle school. Let's talk about the Milton Education Village. Education is very close to my heart, so I want you to elaborate a little bit more on the MEV, Milton Education Village, and where is that headed? Because with certain things having a little bit of a backlash on the university, can we hope to have a university in Milton?
Oh yeah. Unfortunately, the province, with its financial challenges, decided to basically cancel. Parham Gill, who I work very closely with, says no, it's not a full cancellation, it's just a deferral until they get their financial act together. We're working very closely with not only Conestoga as a college, but also with Laurier University to work something together. And that's one thing the province is pushing for, is a place where you can more employment oriented, because we have enough university spaces. We basically have to work on the college side of it and getting the technical. The MEV is basically, the town owns 150 acres on the west side of Tremaine Road. We have where the velodrome is right in the dead center, which will be part of this whole complex. They also have 300 acres of other developers that want to be part of it. So we have not only the education area of a college university together with an innovation center, employment area, residential and commercial. It's going to be a totally unique complex. We're basically saying that this is something that we want to make sure it's done right, because we hope to have a facility that could have maybe 15 to 20,000 students.
So like a mini city within a town, kind of ish. Fantastic. The infrastructure and services are not matching the residential growth, and we're going to touch base with this topic with the taxes in Milton. So let's talk a bit about the infrastructure and services and the growth, as well as the taxes that correlate with this issue that we have at hand. Let's talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, that's an old challenge, and unfortunately since 1997 the province came in the Development Charges Act, which limits how much a municipality can charge.
Right.
And in Halton we have a unique program called the allocation, which charges more for the actual water, sewers, and roads, which we're getting around some of those problems. But the problem is existing taxpayers are paying 15% of the cost for new growth.
Right.
A lot of the time, especially in my ward, the people, we didn't want this growth. We like it just the way it is.
Right.
And that's where you see, in the elections where some councillors are get re-elected because that's their stand. That's what happened with me. I'm trying to find a balanced community. The more growth we have, the more cost it is to existing taxpayers. That's one thing we're appealing to the province. To what's called Bill 108, which is looking at further changes, making it even more favorable for builders. Which I can understand their needs for housing, but we also have to look at the corporation of the town and saying, hey, we got to make sure we're financially sustainable. And unfortunately, the current model, we're not.
So the new official plan for Milton is in the works. I want you to talk to me about this new official plan, and also what are one or two things you hope to achieve in 2020?
Yeah, well, in 2020, I'm hoping getting the town on a financial sustainable plan that we can basically include this growth, but make sure that we balance it. Because right now, unfortunately, the town's industrial and commercial sector is now only 19% of the town. 82% of the money we have to raise comes from residential. And as a lot of people are on fixed incomes, or their salary has been going up. With 5 to 8%, which we had last year, and staff are now saying for 2021, 2022, we're looking at 8 and 9% increase. Well, most people aren't getting triple the inflation rate. We're having a challenge of getting the employment there that could pay the taxes, as well as having a situation where the town has enough resources to do what people want within reason. We can't be everything to everybody, and that's where we've actually said no, we can't have these type of facilities because we're just not big enough to do it.
Or enough taxes to have them executed. Colin, I want to thank you so much for your time and being on this talk show. You've provided a lot of insight onto Milton and the future projections on where we can expect Milton to go. I want to thank you very much for being here, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Sam.
There you have it, Colin Best, Regional Councillor for Ward 1 in Milton. We will continue bringing on more government officials in the coming weeks. Please keep watching House of Politics. Leave your comments in the box below, and if you'd like to email us, it's info@canada1.tv. Thank you so much for watching.